Hello, I'm Pete Vowles, the British Ambassador to Zimbabwe.
And I'm Folakia, the Nubian Queen, the International African.
One of the best parts of my job as Ambassador in Zimbabwe is meeting and learning from Zimbabweans across the country. But also, what's really fascinating is meeting and hearing from Zimbabweans who are making a contribution around the world, and particularly in the United Kingdom, whether it be in business, whether it be in technology, or in the arts.
And this is why we bring you the Ambassador podcast, to amplify the bold and brilliant Zimbabwean voices, Zimbabwean British voices, and they share their journeys with us. From their highs, their lows, their triumphs, we get to hear them here. And that's why we're so excited for you to meet this outstanding man that we have, Amos Mthembo.
And Amos is not just a Zimbabwean making a massively important contribution in the United Kingdom, but he's also making a huge contribution around the world, in Africa and in Asia. I'm sure we'll come on to hear more about that. But Amos is currently is a Chartered Quantity Surveyor. He's the lead commercial at Reall. Now we're going to hear a bit more what that really means in practice in a moment. But basically it finances affordable housing in Africa and in Asia. He's played a key role in developing projects and most importantly, getting finance for them, and has huge experience working in the construction and the built environment sectors around the world.
And Amos is not just a powerhouse in his career. In fact, he has been using his space and his energy as an external lecturer, helping shape other voices for the future.
So, Amos, let's start at the very beginning, because when I sort of read out that you're a Chartered Quantity Surveyor, maybe you could just explain what a Chartered Quantity Surveyor actually is in the real world.
Thank you, Pete. Thank you for having me. So, a Chartered Quantity Surveyor, in simple terms, is a cost manager for a construction project. In other words, an accountant for a construction project. Quite often, we are the brunt of jokes where we are told we are the bean counters, or we go about counting bricks on a project. But more seriously, there are quite a number of variants to being a quantity surveyor. So you've got your estimators. So these are the individuals that you plan a project with, and they pretty much do the estimation. They come back to you and give you a bill of quantities at times, or an estimate of how much it's going to cost you to deliver a project. And then you've got some other quantity surveyors who've ventured into project management, and these are the guys who oversee the actual delivery of a project. My specialism over the years was what is referred to as bank monitoring, whereby I work, so I would sit between a bank that's looking to fund a development, and it's a recognition that banks know or understand the business of lending. However, they don't understand construction projects. Or I'll sit in the middle and be the bridge between the two entities. And unfortunately, we're the same guys in that transaction who the bank will sue if the project goes wrong. So I hope in simple terms I've sort of given you what a quantity surveyor looks at.
So you're the guys who work out exactly we were talking before, exactly how many bricks and how many panes of glass and how many bags of cement are going to be required to build a project, and then be able to project manage to get the finance. Is that a good summary?
That's a very good summary. In short, I'd say there are three things that you're always managing as a quantity surveyor. So it's cost, so the overall cost of the project. It's time. You're looking at whether the project is actually being delivered on time, and it's being the last one is the money. Is it delivered on budget? So cost, time, and budget. Yeah.
And maybe I just ask, what got you into this? What sparked your interest in this field?
So growing up, I went to Hallingbury Primary School in Harare, and then went on to St. John's High School, and always wanted to be an accountant back in the day. And then the weird thing was I never studied accounts at any point in time. And so later on, having witnessed my parents undertake a number of construction projects themselves, later on across quantity surveying, which seemed to very much lean towards accounting in a way. However, I enjoyed the technical side of actually seeing things, being built, putting up structures and so on. And so this is how I eventually sort of ventured into construction. So initially I studied architectural design technology because I was thinking I actually want to be the guy who's designing all of this and so on. But towards the completion of my undergraduate degree, I then realized, okay, there's better career prospects in actually sort of being the quantity surveyor or / the project manager. And that's how I found myself in quantity surveying. But I think the beauty of my journey is that I'm able to understand a project from inception. So right from the concept stage, looking at a design, I can actually see whether the design works, is the design efficient, and then sort of merge that with the quantity surveying side of things.
Interesting, and I have a lot of things in common with Amos, Pete. I also too started off doing architecture and construction when I was in uni. But you
became a famous radio host. Wow.
Funny story to that. But I'm so intrigued by your story, Amos, just hearing how you moved from Zimbabwe, ended up in the UK, and now you're doing this specialized role. And funny story that you didn't have accounts when you were here in Zimbabwe, and now you're doing this amazing job. And then you moved to Reall 2018, and I'm sure you must be game-changing and pushing their mission forward. Tell us a little bit about that. How has your experience shaped your work with Reall, and what exactly is it that you are doing, especially in terms of Africa and Asia?
Thanks for that, Kay. So it wasn't easy transitioning to the UK. Prior to sort of moving to the UK, I'd studied business and IT, and so moving to the UK actually sort of gave me that opportunity to pursue my dreams, which is kind of where I find myself now, and that's where I got the opportunity to study at Coventry University. So I studied both my undergraduate and my postgraduate degree, and then more recently did an MBA with Aston Business School in Birmingham. In terms of joining Reall, it was an odd event whereby I think I was just having a look at my emails. I turned to ignore a lot of my personal emails, but came across this one email, which was a LinkedIn post, and it was speaking of this organization that had worked with women in Mutare, in Zimbabwe, building houses for these women and so on. So I thought, okay, this is in Coventry. I live in Rugby, which is just 20 minutes away. So I thought, I think let me pay a bit more attention to this. Let me get in touch with this organization. So went through the Reall website. I was blown away by what I was seeing. I'm very passionate about Africa, but I also love being here in the UK. So to me, this presented an opportunity for me to work here in the UK, but on something that I'm very passionate about, which is impacting lives across Africa and Asia. So that was my journey into Reall. I think the other thing that was attractive about seeing the Reall sort of proposition was the job was very clear that you needed to have some sort of entrepreneurial mindset to how you work. I think when I look at projects here in the UK, I'd say we are a bit ahead of where typically you find projects across Africa and Asia in terms of sort of project management and so on. And so a lot of the things that you come across in Africa and Asia require you to think at times outside the box. They require you to sort of, start to get an understanding of the cultural nuances in order to solve what is potentially a very simple problem. But it was that opportunity really to, I think, join an organization that I could see working in 15 African and Asian countries, having a massive impact, in people's lives, and an opportunity to, not necessarily in my personal capacity, but through the organization, try my hand at entrepreneurship.
Amazing. I mean, my understanding is that that affordable housing is such a huge priority here in Zimbabwe and across the continent, and also in the UK. It's amazing, Amos, to meet someone who's Zimbabwean but is living and working in Britain, but running projects, and maybe you'll tell us in a minute what you're doing in Zimbabwe or what you're planning to do in Zimbabwe. That's a really great story of the connection between our countries. But just back a minute, what in terms of you're trying to do, you're doing this, you're developing affordable housing projects. What does a normal day look like for you what happens in a day for you when you're trying to get a project off the ground for instance, in Zimbabwe?
Thanks, Pete. So a normal day in my current role with Reall is very different to a normal day as a quantity surveyor just working in the UK. So at the moment, I lead a team that has got one of my team members is in New Zealand, another team member is in Kenya, and then some other colleagues are here in the UK. And so it's a lot of meetings. Communication is key. So we meet often, pretty much on a daily basis. You find that with construction projects, things move along quickly. I know, to laymen, it appears like a building can take years to actually, come together, but things move very quickly. And so in moving very quickly, one needs to always be in touch with what is happening on the ground. So there's a lot of, like I said, meeting with my team, but there's also a lot of meeting with our partners that we work with across both Africa and Asia, and our stakeholders. Our stakeholders are key to us because they having placed demands on things that they expect to see from us, and I think through that there's quite a lot of work that happens through that. But there's also in terms of the partners themselves, there's a lot of providing technical support, so building capacity in the organizations that we work with to ensure that you not only deliver the project you're involved in at that particular moment, but you capacitate the partners so that they're able to continue sort of beyond the support of Reall. Reall, we see ourselves as, I'd not say an incubator, but I think we see ourselves as that entity that, gives usually small to medium-sized enterprises the opportunity to access funding. And once they've accessed funding and grown to a certain point, they graduate from being funded by Reall and now can access commercial funding within the markets they work in. So it's important to build that capacity whilst you're actually in that phase of working with these partners. And a large part of my time is spent supporting partners. I've supported a number of our partners who've gone through the RICS, which is the Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors, through that pathway of getting themselves chartered as well. And so, there's quite a lot of work in terms of both internally and externally on a daily basis.
We also love, Amos, that you're not just shaping projects, right? You're also sitting as the chair for the investment committee at Reall, and that sounds like some serious decision making you have to be making there. And I'm curious, when it comes to the financial side of things, how do you decide where to make the investment? And also, do you have a strategy that you use to say, this is what we're going to do, this is the kind of money we're going to give them? Because it sounds like you're sitting with high stake sort of investment decisions there.
Thank you, Falake. So there are a number of things around the investment committee. The first thing is preparation. So preparation is always key in terms of what sort of projects do we fund. We're looking, I'd say, primarily for two things: a project that washes its face, so a project that has viability and therefore is able to generate the returns that are expected from that project. We are a not-for-profit entity, but however, our model is that, as I mentioned earlier, we fund sort of partners in the early part of their journey and hopefully prepare and package them to be able to access sort of commercial funds later on. So a project has to wash its face. So that's one. The other side of it is a project has to have impact. It has to have impact in terms of the beneficiaries. There has to be a clear impact for beneficiaries, but it also has to have impact from a sustainability point of view. So looking at issues around climate change, looking at resilience, the ability to respond to sort of either sort of natural sort of, disasters that tend to occur in that geography, or even looking at issues of financial resilience. Does a project, for example, allow people who are unbanked to actually start to have access to finance and therefore access to decent housing in the end? So the investment committee is, like I said, it's a lot of preparation ahead of the meeting, because usually that meeting itself is a 2-hour meeting. And the one thing that I'm very clear on as the chair of that is to make sure that we use that 2 hours efficiently. So we have to be very clear that what is the outcome we're looking for, what is the decision that needs to be made, because it's very easy to go into a committee meeting. You've probably got 12 to 16 people in that meeting. Everyone has an opinion, everyone needs to be heard, but you need to chair that meeting with a bit of craft to allow, yes, the opinions to come in, but to get to a point where a decision is made and clear outcomes are derived from the decisions that are made. So the meeting itself is managing time, managing colleagues, but a lot of preparation, I think, behind the scenes to make sure that the proposals that come in, we're happy with, the feasibility that's been done. We're happy it's viable proposals, and we are happy with the impacts that are going to be derived.
Amazing. And I guess, there's a real world impact to those decisions for people who get access to, for where those houses are built and where those projects happen. I was going to ask you, Amos, about your sort of standout projects, but I think for a Zimbabwean audience, maybe I'd like to ask you, change it and ask you about, I hear a rumor that you might have something brewing in Zimbabwe. Maybe you could give us, without giving away any commercial secrets, but maybe give us a bit of a hint of what might be coming.
Okay, so I'm conscious we're short on time, but I'll try to compress everything. So here in the UK, I've had the opportunity to work on, I'd say, 2 key projects that I've worked on. One, which is the Oval in Hereford, which was a joint venture where we were regenerating that area of Hereford, delivering 256 new homes, and this was a joint venture between the local authority and the developer. And then I've worked on a project right here in Rugby, where I live, which is on the Rugby radio site, which is going to be delivering 6,000 homes over the next, I think it's still got another 10 years to go. Now, why I brought this up is this experience has been critical in terms of my development, and in terms of what we're looking to do in Zimbabwe now. We'll be launching a project in Bulawayo in the next couple of months. That project is going to deliver over 700 homes, climate smart, affordable homes for the city of Bulawayo. We're close to completing.
700 climate smart homes. Sorry to interrupt you, Amos. 700 climate smart homes in Bulawayo. Is that that's the headline?
Absolutely, in Lower Rangemore in Bulawayo. So the land is secured. We're just finalizing the legal agreements. I think we should have that across the line in the next week or so. And from there on, I think you'll start to get a lot of noise about us. But I'm very excited about this, not just from a quantity surveyor point of view where I work, but I'm very excited also just to see my fellow Zimbabweans benefiting further from the work that Reall, a British enterprise, is doing in Zimbabwe.
Wow, I'm looking forward to this, and I'm going to keep my ear to the ground so that also I can tap into that. But
maybe we can go and visit it when it's.
I think I'm
you most certainly should.
Yeah, I'm actually curious.
We'll invite you to the open.
Yeah, I'm actually curious what a climate smart house in Bulawayo what the solution looks like for Bulawayo for a climate smart house. But that's getting ahead of myself. Amos, you seem to have a lot on your plate. I mean, not only are you a chartered quantity surveyor, you're chairing the investment committee, but you're also giving back to the young people, right? We also hear that you serve as an external examiner for quantity surveying and commercial management programs at Nottingham Trent University. How on earth do you have the time to do all this? One. Two, why is it so important for you to be giving back to the young people?
I think when you value something, you make time for it. I think that's the simplest answer in terms of how do I have time for it. And in terms of the mentoring side of things, I have benefited immensely from mentors that have gone before me, and I continue to benefit from mentorship to this day. I totally accept that I know a little, but there's a lot more out there that in terms of knowledge that I gain from mentorship. And on that same basis, I provide mentorship to a lot of students who are up and coming in the sector, but as I mentioned earlier, to some of our partners in Africa and Asia who are looking to pretty much move on in terms of their personal careers. I'll be very clear that I enjoy this mentorship because I think it's a two-way street. It's a give and take. So I learn a lot as well from that mentorship, and I always enjoy the opportunity to learn. And therefore, I think just going back to your initial question, how do I make time for it? I make time for it because it's something I enjoy. It's something that I learn from. I take a lot away from it, and hopefully give equally as much.
Amazing. You reminded me just by mentioning Trent Bridge about I hope you're a cricket fan, because the Zimbabwe tour of England in May is going to be playing in Nottingham, so in Trent Bridge. Anyways, sorry, I'm getting carried away.
Which team are you supporting, Pete? Just
I mean, that is obvious, is it not?
I'm trying to work out which shirt to wear. But Amos, you've clearly got, making a huge, the next generation is really important to you, and the work you're doing on mentoring and the work you're doing for the university, and as you say, giving back. Have you got what advice would you give to a young Zimbabwean listening to this today, listening to you? What would you advise them in terms of how they might, to take forward a career in construction, career in project management, something like what you're doing?
So to the young Zimbabweans, I came to the UK in 2001, and so I've spent almost 24 years here in the UK. To the young Zimbabwean, I'd say, travel, expose yourself. I've benefited immensely from the exposure that I've had through living here in the UK. I think I'm a lot more diverse in my thinking, in how I view cultures, through being here in the UK. And then I've benefited immensely from, education here in the UK, and now, having that opportunity to pass on my skills and knowledge to the benefit of not only people here in the UK, but across Africa and Asia. In other areas, what I would encourage sort of young people is understand the skills gap, understand how you can contribute to solving sort of the global shortage in the skills gap. Quantity surveying, oddly enough, happens to be one of those skills that is short. So I'm always encouraging anyone and everyone to venture into quantity surveying. But I think beyond that, there are a lot of other sectors that have got skill shortages. Understand issues around climate change. How can we make this world a better place for future generations? How can you individually, in whatever trade you're in, make the world a better place, for future generations? Understand resilience. COVID really sort of, it was a shock to us all, but I think we've all started to think differently after COVID, and we appreciate that, the world needs to be more resilient in both from an economic point of view, but even from a societal point of view. So understand resilience. And lastly, I'd say understand issues of governance, both corporate and political governance. Prior to working for Reall, I will confess that, I had very little sort of understanding of corporate governance. I think I was very much focused on my role as a quantity surveyor, but having moved into Reall, you have to understand, obviously, the organizations that you're lending to. Are they well governed? Do they have the right policies? But you also have to understand the political dynamics in the regions that you're working in. Does the politics make it viable for investment or otherwise? So, I think those are sort of my 4 tips for young up-and-coming Zimbabweans. Go out there, expose yourself and learn.
How I wish we had more time, Amos. I have so many questions. One of my biggest takeaways is I love how your O-levels, or what you did when you were in school here, did not determine whom you've become, and I think that's the biggest takeaway for me today. So I'm a journalist. We need the inside scoop. What's next for you now? Do you have any new big goals on the horizon as we're about to round up?
As Reall, we have ambitions to deliver homes which will impact 100 million lives by 2030. I think it's a huge target, but I think the 700 homes that we're looking to deliver in Bulawayo over the next 18 or so months are a good starting point for that. We are active in a number of other African countries, but at the moment my focus is getting that agreement across the line and announcing to you a development in Lower Rangemore over the coming months.
We can't wait. It's a great story, and I'm sure we can't wait to hear more about that. Amos, it's been fantastic talking to you. Thank you so much for sharing your kind of career life story and your insights and experiences. It's been really, really interesting, and I can't wait to see more about the Bulawayo homes.
Thank you so much, Amos. It's been an absolute pleasure hanging out with you. And to you watching, I hope Amos's story has inspired you as much as it has inspired Pete and I. Until another powerful episode of Mambasada Edu, Pete and I are out.
Goodbye.